You know when you wake up on the floor and for a few seconds don't understand where you are? It was exactly like that. The cold of the kitchen tiles stuck to my face, and there was a metallic taste in my mouth that I took a while to identify as blood. My blood. I tried to get up slowly, each movement a painful discovery. My right shoulder was throbbing, probably dislocated when I fell. I had a cut on my lip that was still bleeding, and when I touched my forehead, I felt a bump forming. My hands were shaking when I leaned on the kitchen counter to stand up. It was Jessica's birthday, 31 years old. I had arrived early to help decorate, as I always did. I brought flowers, French champagne, the kind she always praised but never bought. I spent almost $200 just on drinks, but I didn't mind. She was my younger sister, and I always wanted her to feel special. Marcus had been strange since I arrived. More aggressive than usual, talking about money, about how some people thought they could control other people's lives just because they had more resources. I didn't understand at the time. I thought he was stressed about work, or rather, the lack of it. He had been between artistic projects for 6 months, living off Jessica's bank account. The argument started when I mentioned, casually, that I was thinking about getting a new car. Jessica commented that she would love to have a new car too, and Marcus exploded. He said I was showing off, that I always did that I thought I was better than them because I earned more. I tried to explain that it wasn't that I was just sharing something that excited me. But he kept yelling, getting closer. Jessica was there, seeing everything, and didn't say a word. She just stood in the kitchen doorway, like a statue. You think your money gives you the right to judge how we live? Marcus roared, and I saw something dangerous in his eyes. Think you can come here playing the perfect sister, the successful engineer? I said he was overreacting, that I had never judged anyone. That's when he pushed me. Hard. My body hit the edge of the counter before I fell to the floor. The pain was instant and sharp. What happened next is still confusing. I remember Marcus yelling more things. Jessica finally moving, but to get her purse and car keys. I saw her walk past me on the floor and whisper something to her husband. They left together. I stayed there for I don't know how long, trying to process what had happened. My phone was on the floor too, the screen cracked. When I got it working, there was a message from Jessica. Elena, you provoked Marcus on purpose. I don't want this toxic energy around my family anymore. Stay away from us. I read the message 3 times before believing it. My younger sister, whom I had practically raised alone when our parents divorced, was blaming me for being assaulted in her house on her birthday. I sat on the kitchen floor and cried, not just from the physical pain, but from discovering that maybe I had never really known my sister. It was funny how things repeated themselves. Since we were little, I had always been the responsible one, the one who solved problems, the one who gave up so Jessica could shine. When she was born, I was 7 years old and already helped Mom with everything, changing diapers, preparing bottles, singing her to sleep. Dad always said I was too mature for my age, but he never seemed worried about it. Actually, I think he liked it. One less daughter to worry about. Jessica was the pretty one, the spontaneous one, the one who made everyone laugh. I was the reliable one, the studious one, the one who didn't cause trouble. During high school, Jessica got into trouble, and I always covered for her. I lied to our parents about where she was, did her homework when she couldn't turn it in on time, lent money I never saw back. Elena always finds a way, was the phrase I heard most at home. In college, I got a full scholarship in civil engineering at UT Austin. Jessica chose fine arts at an expensive private college. Guess who helped with the costs that her partial scholarship didn't cover? I worked part-time throughout my undergraduate years to help pay for her tuition. When I graduated, I got an excellent job at a large construction company. Jessica was finding her artistic path. Mom always asked me to be patient with her, that each person has their own time. Of course they did, especially when someone was paying the bills while you discovered yourself. Jessica lived in an apartment I helped finance, drove a car I gave the down payment for, and whenever she needed money to invest in art, I was there. I didn't mind, or at least I thought I didn't mind. She was my younger sister, and I loved her. When she met Marcus, I thought she had finally found someone who would take care of her. He seemed attentive, interested in her projects, full of plans. He said he was an artist too, that he was between opportunities, but would soon have big projects. Marcus was charming when he wanted to be. He called me favorite sister-in-law, as if I were the only one, and always thanked me for the support I gave Jessica. He said he wanted to get to know me better, that finally Jessica would have a real family with him in her life. I believed it. I wanted so much to believe that Jessica had found someone who valued her, that finally I could stop being the only person responsible for her. Marcus seemed genuinely grateful for the help I offered, and Jessica seemed happier than ever. But now, lying in that hospital bed where I ended up going after spending the whole night on the floor, I could see the signs I had ignored. How Marcus always made comments about my luck in my career. How he minimized Jessica's achievements but in a subtle way, disguised as concern. How Jessica started becoming more distant, less willing to talk about problems. And mainly, how I always accepted the role of responsible older sister, without questioning if it was fair, or if I was creating a dynamic where my value was always conditional on what I could offer. I met Marcus at a barbecue at Jessica's 2 years ago. She was radiant introducing her new boyfriend, and he seemed genuinely nervous to meet me. "Jessica talks about you so much," he said, shaking my hand firmly, the older sister who is like a mother to her. "It must be an enormous responsibility." At the time, I thought it was sweet. He seemed to understand how much Jessica meant to me, and more importantly, he seemed really interested in her. Not like the other guys she dated who clearly just wanted fun. Marcus talked about the future, about building something solid together. He introduced himself as a conceptual artist, specializing in urban installations. He showed photos on his phone of some works in Seattle, where he had come from. He explained that he was in Austin exploring the local art scene, looking for opportunities to expand his work. Jessica hung on every word, clearly impressed. "The problem with being an independent artist," Marcus said during dinner, "is that sometimes you need to invest a lot before seeing the return. I'm in a transition moment, you know, between big projects." He seemed genuinely frustrated with the financial situation, not like someone trying to take advantage. When Jessica mentioned that he was having difficulties getting an apartment without local credit history, I offered to help without thinking twice. "I can be a guarantor," I said. "It's not a problem." I saw the relief on his face, the real gratitude. Marcus was very careful in establishing the terms. "Elena, I don't want this to become a burden for you. I'll pay everything on time. I can sign any document you want." He even suggested paying for a lawyer to formalize everything properly. He seemed so responsible, so concerned about doing everything right. The apartment in Cedar Park cost $2,500 a month, plus a $5,000 deposit. Marcus didn't have the deposit money, so I offered to lend it. "You can pay when you get the next project," I said. Jessica was emotional, hugged me tight. "Thank you for always taking care of us," she whispered. During the first months, Marcus really paid everything on time. He sent receipts by message, always thanking me. He started including me in the couple's plans, invited me to dinners, asked for advice about practical things. For the first time, I felt that Jessica had a partner who also saw me as family. "You know, Elena," Marcus said one night while we were drinking wine on their apartment balcony, "I never had a real family. My parents were very distant, no siblings. Being close to you two shows me what I missed." He seemed sincere, even vulnerable. Jessica was inside preparing dessert, and Marcus continued. "Jessica is lucky to have someone like you. Someone who really cares, who would be there regardless of anything." He paused, looking at the horizon. "I want to be that kind of person for her too. I want her to feel safe, protected." I believed him, completely. I thought that finally Jessica had found someone who valued her the same way I always tried to. Someone who would understand our family dynamic and respect our bond. When they decided to get married after 8 months together, I was genuinely happy. Marcus approached me before proposing to Jessica, asking for my blessing as an older sister. "She means everything to me," he said. "And I know you mean everything to her too. I want to make sure you approve." The wedding was beautiful, small but elegant. I paid for part of the party. Jessica wanted something more sophisticated than their budget allowed, and Marcus was clearly embarrassed when she mentioned this in front of everyone. "Elena, you've already done so much," he said. "You don't need to do more." But Jessica insisted, and I couldn't deny her anything. It was in the middle of the first year of marriage that things started to change. Marcus became more distant, less communicative about rent payments. When I asked, Jessica answered for him. "Oh, he's stressed about some projects that didn't work out. You know how it is. Artistic work is unstable." I started noticing tension between them at family gatherings. Marcus made subtle comments about financial dependence and about how some people use money to control others. At the time, I thought he was talking about ex-bosses or difficult clients. Only now, with my face swollen and shoulder aching, could I see that all those comments were about me. The phone rang at 6 in the morning. Rachel, my best friend since college, answered on the first ring as she always did when I called very early or very late. "Elena, what happened?" I was still on Jessica's kitchen floor when I called her the night before. I could only whisper, "Rachel, I need help," before starting to cry uncontrollably. She didn't ask questions, just said, "I'm coming," and hung up. Rachel lived in Houston, 2.5 hours by car. She arrived in less than 2 hours, driving like crazy through the night. She found me still at Jessica's house. I had managed to drag myself to the living room sofa, but couldn't think straight about what to do next. "My God, Elena," she said when she saw me. Her voice changed completely, became serious, determined. "We're going to the hospital. Now." I tried to protest, saying it wasn't that serious, but Rachel wouldn't listen. "Look at your face. Look at your arm. This is assault, Elena. Serious physical assault." She was already getting my purse, helping me up. In the car on the way to Austin Regional Medical Center, Rachel asked practical questions. Where it hurt most, if I was dizzy, if I had lost consciousness. But she also asked things I didn't want to answer. How many times has this happened before? Had you noticed signs that he was violent? It was the first time, I insisted. Marcus had never even raised his voice to me before. Rachel was quiet for a few minutes, focused on traffic. Then she said calmly, "Elena, men who do this for the first time at 33 usually have done it before. Maybe not to you." At the hospital, Rachel took control of the situation while I was still in shock. She spoke with the triage nurse, explained that I had been assaulted, insisted that they document everything properly. "She'll want to file a police report later," she said, even though I hadn't mentioned that. "Rachel, I don't know if I want to involve the police," I murmured while we waited for the doctor. "It's complicated. It's family." She turned to me with an expression I had never seen before. Angry, but not at me. "Elena, listen to what you just said. You're minimizing the fact that you were assaulted because it's family. He physically hurt you, left you bleeding on the floor, and your sister left the house with him." Her words hit me like a punch. I really was minimizing it, finding excuses, trying to understand Marcus's point of view, wondering if I had really done something to provoke him. "You've known this guy for 2 years," Rachel continued. "I've known you for 10. You have never, not once, provoked anyone to violence. You're the most peaceful person I know. If he assaulted you, it was his choice, not a consequence of what you did." The doctor arrived and spent almost an hour examining every bruise, every painful area. He documented everything: contusion on the forehead, cut on the lower lip, bruises on the right arm and ribs, possible shoulder injury. He ordered an X-ray of the shoulder and recommended that I stay under observation for a few hours. "The injuries are consistent with a fall after impact," he said, dictating to the nurse. "Patient reports being pushed by brother-in-law during family argument." Rachel held my hand while the doctor spoke. When he left, she said softly, "You don't need to decide anything now, but I want you to know that I'll support any decision you make. If you want to file a report, I'll go with you. If you want to sue, I'll help you find a lawyer. If you just want to cut contact with them, I understand." It was the first time since what happened that someone told me I had choices, that I had rights. Jessica had sent me a message blaming and banishing me. Marcus had assaulted me. But Rachel was reminding me that I didn't have to simply accept this. "What would you do in my place?" I asked. "I would make them pay," Rachel answered without hesitation. "Not for revenge, but for justice. And because if they did this to you, they'll do it to someone else." 3 days later, still with my face bruised and arm in a sling, I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee and a pile of papers. Rachel had returned to Houston, but not before making me promise I would call if I needed anything. "And Elena," she said before leaving, "remember that you don't owe anything to those who hurt you." It was while going through the financial documents that reality hit me like lightning. I wasn't just a guarantor for their apartment. I was a co-signer on the mortgage loan for the new house. The dream house that Jessica and Marcus were buying in Cedar Park for $525,000. How had I forgotten this? Marcus had approached me 6 months ago, explaining that they wanted to buy a house. But his credit score wasn't good enough yet after moving to Texas. "It would be temporary," he said. "Just until I establish banking history here, 2 years at most." Jessica was so excited about the prospect of homeownership that I didn't question much. It was in a beautiful neighborhood, with a perfect yard for the dogs they wanted to adopt, close to the art galleries Marcus frequented. She sent dozens of photos of the house, of the plans they had for each room. "Elena, you're an angel," Marcus said when we signed the papers at the bank. "I promise you won't regret this." Jessica hugged me tight and whispered, "Thank you for making our dream possible." At the time, It seemed like a natural extension of the support I always offered. But now, looking at the documents with new clarity, I realized the magnitude of what was at stake. I was legally responsible for more than $500,000 in debt, and Marcus had assaulted me. I called First National Bank on Monday morning. I would like information on how to remove my name as co-signer from a mortgage loan. I told the attendant. Sure, I can transfer you to the loan department. May I ask the reason for the request? Family circumstances have changed, I replied, trying to keep my voice neutral. The loan manager, Mr. Davidson, was direct when I explained the situation. Ms. Rodriguez, I understand perfectly. Unfortunately, to remove a cosigner, the other borrowers would need to refinance the loan or qualify independently based solely on their income. And if they can't qualify on their own? In that case, the loan would be canceled and they would have a determined period to pay off or find alternative financing. I asked him to send me all the necessary forms by email. After hanging up, I sat looking at the computer screen for a long time. I knew exactly what this would mean for Jessica and Marcus. His income was too inconsistent, and she worked part-time at an art gallery. Alone, they would never be able to maintain the loan. They would lose the house. A week before, this would have devastated me. The idea of causing any difficulty for Jessica would have made me give up immediately. But now, with my ribs still aching and the bitter taste of betrayal in my mouth, I felt something different. I felt power. For the first time in my life, I had something they needed more than I needed them. And unlike all the money I had given over the years, this time I could ask for it back. I signed the papers on Wednesday and sent them by express mail. Rachel called that night. How are you feeling? Different, I replied. Startlingly different. I told her about the decision to withdraw my name from the loan. Rachel was quiet for a few seconds, then said, Elena, this is huge. How are you dealing with it? Honestly, I feel more lucid than I've felt in years. It's like I'm finally seeing everything clearly. And Jessica? Are you going to tell her beforehand? No, I replied without hesitation. She made a choice when she left that kitchen with me bleeding on the floor. Now I make my choices too. It was strange how the decision brought peace instead of anxiety. For years, every financial decision involving Jessica caused me stress, made me lose sleep calculating if I could afford it, if she would be upset if I said no, if it would affect our relationship. This time it was different. I was protecting myself, and that seemed not only right, but necessary. On Friday morning, Austin Regional Medical Center was less busy than the night Rachel rushed me there. This time, I was there by choice, with an appointment, for a follow-up consultation with Dr. Martinez, the doctor who had treated me. How are you feeling, Ms. Rodriguez? He asked, examining the bruises that were now yellowed but still visible. Physically better. My shoulder still hurts, but I can move my arm normally. He made notes in the chart. And emotionally? I know situations like this can be traumatic. It was a question that no one besides Rachel had asked. Not my mother, whom I still didn't have the courage to tell what happened. Not other relatives. Only the doctor, a professional stranger, cared about my emotional state. Doctor, I need to ask something. The medical records from this consultation, from the first time I came here, do they stay permanent in my chart? Yes, of course. Everything is documented. Why? Can I request copies of everything? The reports, photos of the bruises, the x-rays. Dr. Martinez looked at me more carefully. May I ask for what purpose? I might need them for legal matters. He nodded with understanding. Of course. I'll ask the secretary to provide everything. Ms. Rodriguez, may I suggest you consider talking to someone? We have a social worker specialized in domestic violence cases. It wasn't exactly domestic violence, I started to say, but he gently interrupted me. It was violence, and it was committed by someone close. It doesn't need to be a spouse to be traumatic and have legal consequences. I agreed to talk to the social worker, Sandra Williams. She was a woman about 50 years old, with a maternal manner but extremely attentive eyes. We talked for almost an hour. Elena, you mentioned that your sister witnessed the assault and then blamed you. How do you feel about that? Betrayed, I replied without thinking. Completely betrayed. Not just because she didn't defend me, but because she expelled me, as if I had provoked it. And is this a pattern in your relationship? You being held responsible when things go wrong? The question caught me off guard. I thought about all the years of Elena always finds a way, of you're the older one, you need to be patient, of Jessica counts on you. I think so, I admitted. I think I've always been responsible for solving her problems. Sandra took notes. And financially? Do you support your sister? I told her about the apartment, about the bail, about the loans that became gifts, about the house mortgage. Sandra listened without judgment, just asking occasional questions to clarify details. Elena, would you like me to document our conversation? Sometimes it's useful to have professional record of the emotional impacts of an assault, especially when there are complex family dynamics involved. Yes, please. When I left the hospital, I had a folder with everything. Detailed medical reports, professional photos of the bruises from different angles, X-ray reports, social workers' notes describing the family and emotional context, everything stamped, signed, dated. In the car, I took out my phone and photographed each page of the documentation. I saved everything in 3 different places: on the phone, on the computer, in the cloud. Then I made physical copies and kept them in a separate folder. Rachel was right about one thing. If I decided to do anything legal about this, I would need to be prepared. And now I was. The phone call came on a Tuesday at 2 in the afternoon. I was at the construction site reviewing the structural plans for a residential building when my cell phone rang. Jessica. 2 rings and it would go to voicemail, as I always did when she called in the last 2 weeks. But this time, something made me answer. Elena? Her voice sounded strange, tense. I need to talk to you. I'm working. Jessica, it's about the house. The bank called this morning. They said you withdrew your name from the loan. Her voice was rising with each word. Elena, tell me this is a mistake. I stayed silent, listening to her breathing heavily on the other end of the line. Elena, answer. Tell me this is some kind of misunderstanding. It's not a misunderstanding, I replied calmly. I did withdraw my name. The silence that followed was so long I thought she had hung up. How could you do this to us? Her voice was now tearful, desperate. Elena, this is our house, our dream house. We've already spent so much money on renovations, on furniture, and I spent $525,000 being your guarantor. But you always helped us. You never complained. Why now? The question genuinely surprised me. She really didn't know why. Jessica, your husband assaulted me in your kitchen 3 weeks ago. You saw everything and sent me a message blaming me and asking me to stay away from you. Oh. Elena, stop with this drama. You provoked Marcus, you know you did. And it wasn't anything that serious. Nothing that serious. I looked at the still visible scar on my lip through my phone's front camera. Jessica, I need to get back to work. No, Elena, wait, we can talk. Work this out. Come have dinner at our house tonight. We can talk. I'm not going to your house. Then we'll come to your apartment. What time do you get home? Before I could answer, she hung up. At 7 in the evening, they were at my apartment door. I saw through the peephole. Jessica with a crying face, Marcus standing behind her with his arms crossed. I took a deep breath before opening, leaving the security chain on. Elena, please. Jessica began immediately. We need to work this out. It can't be like this. I looked at Marcus, who avoided my gaze. Hi, Elena, he murmured. Can we talk? Here is fine, I replied without removing the chain. Elena, stop this, Jessica said, impatient. Open the door properly. We're family. Family doesn't leave me bleeding on the kitchen floor. Marcus finally looked at me. He seemed embarrassed, but not sorry. Elena, that was a moment of stress. I was going through some problems. You know how it is. No, I don't know how it is to assault someone. Look, maybe I reacted excessively, he continued, as if he were doing a big favor by admitting this. But you also weren't being very diplomatic that day. Jessica nodded vigorously. That's what I was trying to tell you. Elena, you know how Marcus gets stressed about money issues and you keep talking about new cars, about promotions. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. So you came here to explain to me how it was my fault for being assaulted? Nobody's saying it was your fault, Jessica replied quickly. We're saying that maybe everyone contributed to the situation getting out of control. Everyone. I repeated the words slowly. Jessica, you saw me fall to the floor. You saw me bleeding. And your contribution was to leave the house with me there. She looked away, embarrassed. I was in shock, Elena. I didn't know what to do. So now you know. You came here to ask me to go back to being your guarantor? Marcus stepped forward. Elena, look, I know we need to improve communication between us. Maybe we can establish some rules, to avoid misunderstandings. Rules like not assaulting me? Rules like respecting each other's boundaries, he replied, clearly irritated with my sarcasm. Jessica touched his arm, a gesture I recognized as an attempt to calm him down. Elena, without this house, we have nowhere to go. The apartment has already been rented to someone else because we were going to move next month. And this is my problem, why? Because you're my sister, Jessica screamed. Jessica, finally losing her composure. Because you always took care of me. Because that's what family does. Family also doesn't blame me when I'm assaulted. My God, Elena, you don't stop with that. Jessica was crying now. It was a fight, an argument that got out of control. It happens in all families. No, Jessica, it doesn't happen in all families. And if it happens in yours, it's because you choose to accept it. Marcus took a step forward, getting closer to the door. Elena, you're being vindictive. This isn't fair. Marcus, I said calmly, if you take one more step toward my door, I'm calling the police. He stopped immediately, but the anger in his eyes was unmistakable. Jessica looked between us both, noticing the tension. Elena, for God's sake, what happened to you? You were always so understanding, so generous. What happened to me is that I woke up on your kitchen floor and realized that my generosity was being interpreted as obligation. I closed the door. They stayed on the other side for another 10 minutes. Jessica knocking and begging, Marcus making sarcastic comments about ingratitude and people who think they're better than others. Eventually, they left. I called Rachel. How did it go? She asked as soon as she answered. They came here to try to convince me that the assault was my fault and that I need to go back to being their guarantor because that's what family does. Jesus Christ. Elena. And how do you feel? Relieved, I replied, surprising myself with my own answer. Relieved to be sure I made the right decision. The next day, Mom called. Carmen Rodriguez, 52 years old, retired nurse, master at making everyone feel guilty for any decision that didn't please her completely. Elena, what's happening between you and your sister? I knew Jessica had told her version of the story first. She always did that, ran to relatives to make sure they heard her perspective before mine. What did Jessica tell you, Mom? She told me you had an ugly fight at her house, and now you're being cruel to her over money. Elena, this doesn't seem like you. Mom, Marcus assaulted me, physically. He pushed me. I fell. I got hurt. Jessica saw everything and then sent me a message blaming me. Silence. Then, Elena, are you sure you're not exaggerating? Sometimes when we're upset. Mom, I went to the hospital. I have a medical report. More silence. Well, but Elena, you know how Marcus gets when he's stressed. And you? Sometimes you can be a little insensitive without realizing it. It was incredible. My own mother was finding ways to blame me. So you think I deserve to be assaulted? Of course not, my daughter. That's not it. It's just that, look, family relationships are complicated. Maybe if everyone apologized. I have nothing to apologize for. Elena, your sister is desperate. She called me crying, said that without your support they're going to lose the house, that they have nowhere to go. She should have thought about that before expelling me from her life. My daughter, you've always been the more mature one, the more responsible one. You can't abandon your sister now when she needs you most. There it was again. I was the more responsible one, so I had to swallow everything and continue taking care of Jessica, regardless of how she treated me. Mom, would you like to know how I am? If I'm okay after being assaulted and abandoned by family? Elena, don't be dramatic. Of course I worry about you, but you're strong. You always were. Jessica is more fragile, needs more support. Jessica is 31 years old. She's married. She has to learn to solve her own problems. Elena Rodriguez? Mom's voice became firm, using the tone she used when we were children. You're being selfish. Family is family regardless of what happens. No, Mom. Good family doesn't abandon you when you need them. Good family doesn't blame you when you're a victim of violence. I hung up. An hour later, my Aunt Rosa called, then Cousin Miguel, then Aunt Carmen, all with the same conversation. Jessica was desperate, I was being too harsh, family is family, I couldn't abandon my younger sister. None of them asked how I was. None of them questioned why Jessica had blamed me for the assault. None of them seemed to find it problematic that Marcus had physically hurt me. For the first time, I could clearly see the role I had always played in the family. I was Jessica's emotional and financial safety net. My job was to be available, be understanding, solve problems, give up. And when I finally said no, the whole family mobilized to pressure me back into my place. But my place had changed, and there was no going back. The notification arrived at my work on a rainy Thursday. The court officer seemed almost embarrassed to hand me the envelope. Elena Rodriguez? He asked, as if he expected me to say it wasn't me. That's me. Court notification. I need you to sign here. My colleagues looked curious while I signed the receipt. I waited until I got home to open it. It was a temporary restraining order, Jessica Rodriguez Johnson requesting protection against Elena Rodriguez, alleging threatening behavior and harassment. I sat in the kitchen reading every word carefully. According to the document, I had threatened the financial stability of the couple, had made intimidating comments at her apartment door, and was causing extreme emotional stress through psychological persecution. There wasn't a single mention of the assault I suffered, nor of the cruel message she sent me, nor of the fact that they came to my house to pressure me. The hearing was scheduled for next Tuesday at the Travis County Family Court. I called Rachel, but this time I didn't cry. I was angry, very angry. "She's trying to flip the story," I said after reading the documents to Rachel over the phone. "She's painting me as the aggressor. Elena, you need a lawyer now. I've already called 3. I can get a consultation for tomorrow. And you have all that medical documentation, right?" "I have everything. Reports, photos, social worker's report. It's all organized in a folder." "Good. Elena, listen. This might be the best thing that happened." "How so?" "Because now you'll have to tell the truth in court. With a judge, with official record, and you have proof. What does she have?" "Words." The lawyer I hired, Dr. Patricia Santos, specialized in family law and domestic violence cases. Woman about 40 years old, gray hair pulled back in an impeccable bun, reading glasses hanging on a golden chain. "Ms. Rodriguez, I read your medical documentation. This is a classic case of DARVO, deny, attack, reverse victim, and offender." She explained that it was common for aggressors or their accomplices to try to use the legal system to continue harassing their victims. "Your sister is trying to control you through the courts, since family pressure didn't work. Doctor, I just want this to end. I don't want to sue anyone. I don't want money. I just want to be left alone. I understand." "Elena. But now that she filed this restraining order, you need to defend yourself. If the judge grants a permanent order based on false allegations, it will be on your record. It could affect your work, your future opportunities." Dr. Santos explained our strategy. "We're going to prove that you're the real victim here. We have solid medical documentation, social worker's report, and I'm going to request that your sister and her husband be interrogated under oath about the night of the assault. What if they lie? Perjury is a federal crime." "Elena. And I'm very good at asking the right questions." The Travis County Family Court was an imposing red brick building in downtown Austin. I arrived an hour before the hearing, wearing my best black suit, hair pulled back in an elegant bun, makeup covering the last traces of bruises that still hadn't completely disappeared. Jessica was on the other side of the hallway with a public defender who looked like he had just graduated from law school. She looked at me once and then avoided eye contact the rest of the time. Marcus was sitting behind her, arms crossed, occasionally whispering in her ear. "All rise for the Honorable Judge Margaret Chen." Judge Chen was an Asian American woman about 60 years old, short gray hair, a look that didn't tolerate nonsense. She examined the documents quickly before beginning. "Ms. Rodriguez Johnson, you allege that your sister is causing emotional stress through threatening behavior. Can you specifically explain what behaviors?" Jessica's lawyer stood up. "Your Honor, my client alleges that the defendant suddenly and maliciously withdrew crucial financial support, causing severe housing instability." "Housing instability doesn't constitute physical threat," the judge interrupted. "Are there allegations of direct threats or violent behavior?" Jessica stood up, visibly nervous. "Your Honor, my sister, she's always been very controlling with money, and when I tried to establish boundaries, she became vindictive." "Ms. Rodriguez Johnson, answer my question. Did your sister physically threaten you?" "Well, not exactly physically, but..." Dr. Santos stood up. "Your Honor, I would like to present evidence showing that my client is, in fact, a victim of physical assault committed by the petitioner's husband." The judge raised her eyebrows. "Proceed." The next 2 hours were surreal. Dr. Santos methodically presented each piece of evidence. Medical photos of my bruises projected on a large screen, detailed hospital reports, social worker's testimony. "Your Honor, on March 15th, my client was brutally assaulted by Mr. Marcus Johnson in the presence of the petitioner. Instead of offering support to the victim, the petitioner sent a message blaming my client for the assault." Dr. Santos read Jessica's message aloud to the court. "Elena, you provoked Marcus on purpose. I don't want this toxic energy around my family anymore. Stay away from us." I saw Jessica shrink in her chair. "Mr. Johnson," the judge said, "please approach." Marcus walked to the front of the court looking like a man going to his own funeral. "Mr. Johnson, did you assault Elena Rodriguez on the night of March 15th? He hesitated, looked at Jessica's lawyer, then back at the judge. "Your Honor, there was an argument that..." got out of control. Is that a yes? Maybe I pushed her, but there's no but when it comes to physical assault, Mr. Johnson. Did you push Ms. Rodriguez, causing the injuries documented in these medical photographs? Marcus was sweating now. It was a moment of stress. Mr. Johnson, answer yes or no. Did you cause these injuries? Long silence. Yes. The judge made notes. Ms. Rodriguez Johnson, did you witness this assault? Jessica was pale. Your Honor, it was a very confusing situation. Yes or no? Did you see your husband push your sister? Yes, but... And what was your immediate reaction? Jessica didn't answer. Ms. Rodriguez Johnson, I'm waiting for an answer. I left the kitchen. Did you offer medical assistance to your sister? No. Did you call emergency services? No. Instead, you sent a message blaming the victim for the assault? The silence in the courtroom was deafening. Yes, Jessica whispered. Judge Chen took off her glasses and cleaned them calmly. When she put them back on, her look was even more severe. Ms. Rodriguez Johnson, this is one of the most flagrant attempts at judicial system manipulation I've ever seen. You tried to use this court to continue harassing an assault victim, your own sister. She turned to Marcus. Mr. Johnson, are you aware that assaulting someone is a crime? Your Honor, I'm recommending that this case be forwarded to the district attorney for criminal investigation. Finally, the judge looked at me. Ms. Rodriguez, would you like to request a restraining order against Mr. Johnson and your sister? I looked at Jessica, who was crying silently. I looked at Marcus, who avoided my gaze. I thought about all the years of manipulation, emotional blackmail, making me feel guilty for establishing boundaries. Yes, Your Honor, I would like that. Granted. Mr. Johnson and Ms. Rodriguez Johnson are prohibited from contacting Ms. Elena Rodriguez by any means for the next 5 years. Violation of this order will result in immediate arrest. The judge banged the gavel. Case closed. Leaving the courthouse, Dr. Santos congratulated me. Elena, you were very brave. I know it wasn't easy. Doctor, I feel empty. Not relieved, not satisfied, just empty. She stopped on the courthouse steps and looked at me kindly. That's normal. You just cut ties with family. Even when it's the right decision, it still hurts. I saw Jessica and Marcus leaving the building. She looked in my direction once, and for a moment I saw in her eyes the younger sister I used to rock to sleep. But then she turned her back and they walked away. Jessica was waiting for me in my building's parking lot on a Saturday morning, 3 weeks after the trial. When I got out of the car coming back from the gym, she was leaning against my Honda, arms crossed, looking thinner and more tired than I remembered. Elena, we need to talk. Jessica, there's a restraining order. You can't be here. Please. 5 minutes. After that, I'll disappear from your life forever if that's what you want. Against my better judgment, I stopped a few meters away from her. 5 minutes. I was wrong, she said without preamble. About everything. About that night. About the message I sent you. About trying to blame you in court. I waited. I wasn't going to make it easy for her. Marcus, he was furious after the trial. Said I ruined everything, that it was my fault we lost the house. And when he got like that, I saw how he really is when things don't go his way. She paused, looking at her own hands. He pushed me too. Elena, last week, the same way he pushed you. I felt a pang of something. Not satisfaction, but maybe confirmation. And you know what I did? I called Mom crying, hoping she would say it wasn't that serious. That relationships are complicated. That I should be patient. Jessica laughed without humor. Just like she did with you. And did she say that? She did. Exactly the same words. Jessica looked at me directly for the first time. That's when I understood what you tried to tell me in court. That our family always protected me from the consequences of my mistakes and always expected you to swallow everything in silence. I didn't respond. I didn't know what to say. Elena, I know I have no right to ask this, but forgive me for all these years of using you as a safety net, for blaming you when you were assaulted, for trying to use the court against you. I looked at my younger sister, whom I had raised, protected, supported for almost 3 decades. The sister who had abandoned me bleeding on her own kitchen floor. Jessica, I said calmly, you're no longer my sister. She blinked, as if she had been slapped. Elena, you made a choice that night. You chose to protect your husband instead of helping me. You chose to blame me instead of defending me. And then you still tried to destroy me in court to protect your own image. I know I did everything wrong. It's not about you doing wrong, Jessica. It's about who you really are when you need to choose between doing right and protecting your own interests. Tears started running down her face. Elena, please, you're the only family I have left. I left Marcus. I'm living in a tiny apartment. I lost my job at the gallery because the owner is friends with your lawyer and found out what happened. And you think that's my problem? No. She wiped her face with her hands. No, I don't. I just wanted you to know that I finally understood, that you were right about everything. Jessica, listen to me carefully. I don't want your forgiveness. I don't want your belated understanding. And I definitely don't want your friendship. You showed who you really are when it mattered. And that person is not someone I want in my life. I walked toward the building. Elena, she screamed behind me. You were always my older sister. Always took care of me. You can't just stop. I stopped and turned around one last time. I can, Jessica. And that's exactly what I'm doing. I entered the building and didn't look back. Mom called an hour later, hysterical. Elena Rodriguez, what did you say to your sister? She called me crying, saying you rejected her, that you were cruel to her. I told her the truth, Mom. Your sister is sorry. She learned her lesson. You can't be so inhuman. Inhuman was her blaming me for being assaulted. Elena, family is family. You can't simply cut your sister out of your life. I can, and that's what I'm doing. So you're cutting the whole family out of your life? Because you know we all sided with Jessica. The question caught me by surprise. During weeks of family pressure, no one had been so direct. Mom, you all sided with Jessica when she blamed me for being assaulted. You sided with her when she tried to sue me based on lies. If that's what you call family, then yes, I'm cutting you out of my life. Elena? No, Mom. Listen carefully. I spent 30 years of my life being the responsible daughter, the sister who fixes everything, the one who gives up her own desires to take care of Jessica. And when I needed you, when I needed family to support me after being a victim of violence, you abandoned me. We didn't abandon you. You did. All of you chose to protect Jessica from the consequences of her actions instead of worrying about me. So now I choose to protect myself. Elena, you're making a mistake you'll regret for the rest of your life. Mom, the only regret I have is taking so long to make this decision. I hung up and blocked her number. 18 months later, I'm at the top of Barton Creek Greenbelt, admiring the view of Austin stretching to the horizon. The sun is setting, painting the sky orange and pink, and I just completed my first real rock climb. Not those artificial walls at the gym, but genuine stone, rough and challenging. Elena, you did it! Rachel shouts from below where she's securing my descent. How do you feel? Free, I shout back, and it's true, completely free. The life I built in recent months is unrecognizable compared to what I lived before. I got a promotion to senior manager at the construction company with a 40% salary increase. I bought a bigger apartment in a better neighborhood, just for me, without needing to consider other people's budgets or be anyone's guarantor. I started rock climbing after a work colleague invited me. I discovered I liked the contemplative solitude of the mountain, the physical and mental challenge, the feeling of depending only on myself to reach the top. I'm also taking pottery classes on Thursdays and learned to make artisan breads on Sundays. Rachel moved to Austin 6 months ago, got a job at a tech company, and is living 2 blocks from me. We have dinner every Friday. Sometimes we cook together. Sometimes we order Thai food and watch bad movies. It's simple, drama-free, without heavy family obligations. I met other people too. Tom, my climbing instructor, who became a close friend and maybe something more. We're still figuring it out. Sarah and Miguel from the pottery group, who invited me to spend Christmas with their families when they found out I would be alone. Chosen family, Sarah called it. It's as valid as blood family. Sometimes even better. Financially, I'm in a completely different situation. Without Jessica's constant emergencies, I've saved more money in the last 18 months than in the previous 5 years. I'm planning a trip to New Zealand at the end of the year. I always wanted to go, but there was never money left after helping my sister. The strangest thing is how I feel about family. During the first months, I would sometimes wake up feeling guilty, wondering if I wasn't being too harsh, if I shouldn't give Jessica another chance. But as time passed and no one tried to contact me anymore, I realized the predominant feeling was relief. I no longer need to walk on eggshells to avoid offending Jessica. I no longer need to share every professional achievement with someone who made faces when I had successes. I no longer need to pretend that family is family when family was using and abusing me. Tom asked me the other day if I miss them. Sometimes I miss the idea of them, I replied. I miss having a younger sister who really cared about me, a mother who supported me. But those people never really existed. I was creating idealized versions of them in my head. Today, when I get home from climbing, there's a letter in my mailbox. Handwritten envelope, no return address. But I recognize Jessica's handwriting immediately. I sit in the kitchen with a cup of tea and open it slowly. 3 pages of small handwriting, talking about how she has grown so much in recent months, how she finally understands the mistakes she made, how she would like a chance to rebuild our sisterly relationship. She tells me she's doing therapy, that she officially divorced Marcus, that she got a job at an art school. She says Mom misses me, that the whole family learned a lot about toxic dynamics, that everyone wants a chance to redeem themselves. The letter ends with, Elena, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but you were always my older sister, my protector, my best friend. I can't accept that our story ends like this. Please give me a chance to show that I really changed. I love you and miss you every day. I finish reading and look at the pages for a few minutes. 2 years ago, this letter would have devastated me emotionally. I would have cried, would have stayed awake all night thinking, would have called Rachel asking for advice on how to deal with the situation. Today I feel nothing. Not anger, not sadness, not nostalgia. It's like reading about the life of a stranger who happens to have the same last name as me. I get up, go to the kitchen sink, and tear the letter into small pieces. I throw everything in the trash without looking back. I pick up my phone and send a message to the chosen family group. Rachel, Tom, Sarah, and Miguel. Anyone want to come have dinner at my place tomorrow? I'm going to make that vegan lasagna you all loved. The responses come immediately. Rachel, I'll bring the wine. Tom, can I bring dessert? That chocolate brownie? Sarah, Miguel and I will bring salad. What time? 7 o'clock, I reply. And thank you for being my real family. Tom responds with a heart emoji. Sarah sends a row of hug emojis. Rachel writes, love you, Elena, always. I put away the phone and look out the kitchen window. Austin is illuminated in the night, millions of lights stretching as far as the eye can see. Somewhere in this city, Jessica is probably waiting for a response that will never come. Marcus is living with the consequences of his actions. Mom is trying to understand how she lost 2 daughters in a family she thought she controlled. But here, in this apartment I chose, surrounded by people who love me for who I am and not for what I can offer, I'm completely at peace. I learned that family isn't about DNA or obligations. It's about mutual choice, respect, genuine loyalty. It's about people who support you when you're vulnerable, who celebrate your successes without envy, who defend you when you're being attacked. Jessica had 28 years to learn to treat me with basic dignity. She chose not to learn. The family had decades to stop using me as an emotional and financial safety net for Jessica's problems. They chose not to stop. Now I made my choice too. And for the first time in my life, I chose myself. At the kitchen table, I open my laptop and start planning the trip to New Zealand. I'm going to stay 3 weeks, hike in the mountains, learn about Maori culture, maybe even try glacier climbing. Alone, free. Finally, completely free. The phone rings. Tom calling. Hi, how was climbing today? You seemed thoughtful up there on top. It was perfect, I reply, and it's true. I was thinking about how the view gets more beautiful when you work hard to get there. Climber philosophy. He laughs. I like that. Want to tell me what you were really thinking? I was thinking that I finally know who I am when I'm not being anyone's older sister, anyone's responsible daughter, anyone's safety net. And who are you? I look once more out the window, at the city I chose, at the life I built. I'm Elena Rodriguez, civil engineer, climber in my spare time, terrible potter but getting better, loyal friend but only to those who deserve it. And for the first time in my life, I'm completely mine. I like this, Elena, Tom says softly. Me too, I reply. Me too. After I hang up, I stay a few more minutes in the kitchen, savoring the silence, the peace, the complete absence of family drama. Tomorrow, I'll wake up when I want. I'll spend my money on what makes me happy. I'll make decisions thinking only of myself. And I won't feel any guilt about it. This is the story of how I discovered that sometimes the family you build is infinitely more valuable than the family you were born into. And that choosing your own happiness isn't selfishness, it's survival. Jessica, Marcus, Mom, and the whole network of relatives who pressured me to accept abuse in the name of family unity continue their lives somewhere. I sincerely hope that one day they learn to build relationships based on mutual respect instead of manipulation and guilt. But that's no longer my problem. I am free.